Doom the Dark Ages on the Steam Deck. So this is a few hours before release. So at the time of making this video, the game should be like 2 hours away maybe for most people and people on Game Pass. But what about the Steam Deck? Well, we don't have a Steam Deck compatibility thing, it's still unknown. But since Indiana Jones got verified, I wanted to check out closely if this one could be considered verified if they do some adjustments. So let's get into it right away. So when it comes to settings, I've investigated with you guys on a live stream showing you the performance, and we ended up getting basically trying to get 30s by all means, by any means possible, better said. So 600p on windowed mode, so you can use the SteamOS sharpness slider for FSR1. I think on 0 it looks good. Then when it comes to the FOV, 90 degrees, sharpening on the minimum, FSR performance. There's also TAA that you can use for dynamic resolution, but unfortunately, even at 50% resolution, the game is very unstable, so I recommend holding it at performance FSR. And then when it comes to the settings, everything on the lowest, excepting reflections, which are completely turned off, even screen space. But unfortunately, the game doesn't have very good scalability. From low to ultra nightmare, there isn't a huge performance difference, even on a PC, so yeah, this is what I had to do, disable reflections as well to have that extra improvement. And yes, you saw it right, FSR performance at 600p, so internally this is 300p. And I want to thank Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Instant Gaming is a website where you can buy games for cheaper for PC, PlayStation, Xbox and Nintendo Switch. And the game we're playing today, Doom the Dark Ages, is $70 for Steam, 70.47. You can also find lots of new games like Expedition 33 for $33.55, GTA 5 Enhanced for $11.40. So if you want to get games for cheaper and support the channel at the same time, follow the affiliate link down in the description. With this partnership, we're giving away one free game each month to one of you guys. So just follow the link in the description, hit where it says participate, follow myself and Instant Gaming on social media, and you have a chance to win a game of your choice on Instant Gaming. The last winner last month, 14 days ago, was Spibet, and he chose Assassin's Creed Shadows. So thanks again to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Let's continue. Alright, so welcome to Doom the Dark Ages. Again, if you want to see all the testing we did in real time with many presets, frame gen, all that good stuff, there is a link in the description for the live stream. I'm like 1.5 hours playing the game and trying stuff with you guys in real time. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, I probably tried it already, so check that link if you're interested. In here, I'm just going to be using the settings that I showed you a moment ago, just because that was, right now at least, the only way to get 30 FPS. And as you can see in the top left corner, there was a UI with some out of focus effect. Sometimes that can be noticeable in the middle of the screen, but that's not blur for resolution. That's blur because the UI has that transparency effect. So in the top left corner, you might see some out of focus stuff. But I love that they actually put UI scale options. So the UI and the text can be bigger, which works well for a smaller screen. But again, we're playing, to get 30s, we're playing at 300p. So 600p is the main resolution. And then 300p is 50% that resolution on each axis. So it's a pretty damn low resolution, let's be honest here. I tried everything and it was basically the resolution that I had to drop it to. And it's nowhere close to perfect, as you can probably notice. You can also disable the directional occlusion, but I haven't noticed much of a difference personally, when it comes to performance at least. So you're slowly hitting those enemies, dodging, and then hitting them back. And the Steam Deck in sections like this doesn't have any problems at all. It just powers through it. Okay, and now, again, in comparison to the very beginning of the game that is full of rain and volumetrics going around everywhere, here we're actually completely fine in comparison. Of course, less enemies on screen as well, and there's some siege missions that you probably saw in the trailer and in other videos. But look at those physics. That basically runs worse than this, but it seemed pretty similar to the very first mission with lots of rain. So yeah, once you get indoors and all that, it seems to be okay. I mean, again, it's not 60 FPS, not even close. I wasn't expecting that on a Steam Deck, obviously. But it's still 300p internally, if you think about it. So 600p upscale from 300p. And that was the only way to be anywhere close the numbers that I'm getting right now, especially in the more demanding parts, to be at 30 FPS with some drops into the upper 20s. There's some weird sections like this specific place that I drop frames on my PC that also drops frames here. But I think it's a good time now to show you how it looks on the smaller screen, because it's 300p, but some of it can be covered by being a smaller screen. It won't be unnoticeable, obviously, but I think it's worth showing it to you on camera. Alright, so we're now in handheld, same settings as before. You can maybe notice the ground flickering there. 300p, remember. So my main issue so far is that I cannot lock the frame rate to 30. If I drop it here to 30 FPS, the game hard locks to 20 FPS. Not sure if this is a bug or something. I tried everything and it does this. Unfortunately, there's no in-game FPS cap. But going back to the topic, on the smaller screen, you can notice that it's a very low resolution. Some people, when I was streaming this, were saying this looks like the Switch 1 version of Doom. And yeah, I kinda get it. The resolution is pretty damn low, so it's understandable. It kinda has a resemblance to it, but with ray tracing and way more advanced effects. So despite being a super low resolution, I can still understand what's going on and move throughout the world. So what are my thoughts on this? Should it be verified? In my opinion, well, I think it shouldn't be verified. It's not verified at this point. I'm just saying because I saw Indiana Jones getting verified on Steam Deck, being on a previous iteration of this engine, but with ray tracing on top of it. But I feel like Valve could easily, after a few updates, call this one verified, because if you lower the resolution enough, you're borderline 30s when being attacked by a good amount of enemies. In this case, this part is not the most demanding when it comes to amount of characters on screen, but for some reason this specific room dropped frames like crazy on my PC. Alright, so going back to the beginning that I said it dropped pretty hard. It's not the worst running, obviously, but it drops pretty hard because rain and all that stuff. More effects on screen than usual. I mean, just look at this explosion coming up. Well, this is pretty hard on the GPU as well, apart from everything else going on. And here's a good chunk of enemies, but again, it can get much worse later on. In the future, I'm probably going to do it's called Siege Chapter 6 or something like that. And it's a way bigger place, a bigger map with more enemies. But I'll save that for later when patches come out. Because just looking at previous maps, such as this one, I mean, this is the very beginning of the game. It's already like getting close into the upper 20s. And I dropped the resolution pretty damn hard. So while it's impressive that it actually runs at all, because it's forced ray tracing and many GPUs cannot even launch the game, I'm happy that at least it can launch on Steam Deck, but for the love of God, Valve, please do not call this verified. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think it's playable. You can definitely notice the super low resolution, not perfect frame times by any means. And you need to use a preview of SteamOS in order for this to work like at all. I had to go to the preview branch on SteamOS. So while technically the game is very impressive when it comes to that technology, I wouldn't play it on Steam Deck. I'll wait for Steam Deck 2 for this one. And if Valve at some point in the future, after making this video, remember the game releases in around 3 hours at the time of publishing this video, well, I wouldn't consider it verified at this point. And I don't know how they would do that with patches. The thing is, the game is not super scalable. That's something I noticed on my PC when testing the game there. Is that by lowering the settings, I didn't get much of a performance boost. There is a boost going from, I don't know, ultra to low, but it's not a huge performance increase. So I think they should be able to... So I think in the future maybe they can add more options to sacrifice more visuals to improve performance. Because right now, lowering the settings doesn't seem to have a huge impact. The biggest impact obviously is resolution. And again, in this case, we dropped to 300p. So 300p I think is pretty rough. I wish we could lower the settings further instead. Because you can notice the pixelation very easily, obviously, despite being a small screen. Unfortunately, also frame generation seems to be broken on Steam Deck. Maybe it's because the resolution is super low, I'm not entirely sure. But as of right now, I wouldn't really play this on Steam Deck. It's very expensive, first of all. And second of all, if you install Windows on your Steam Deck, you can still play this using Game Pass, or use Cloud Game Pass if you don't mind the extra input lag. Because at this point, I mean, on those services you play it at 60 FPS with better visuals, some extra input lag, but not a huge deal, considering how it runs on this. I'd say if Valve ever makes this verified, which I think they will at some point say it's verified, like Indiana Jones, because we're very close to the bottom 30 FPS range. If that happens, well, I hope at least we have better options to downgrade visuals for better performance, and an in-game FPS cap, because the one from the Steam Deck, if you use it, it hard locks to 20 FPS for some reason. If they do that, and again, like in Indiana Jones, they make a preset that uses less memory for Steam Deck, then maybe I would say it's a good idea, but at this point, again, day minus 2 hours from release, I wouldn't recommend it on Steam Deck. If you have a Series S as an example or a PC, stream it locally to your Steam Deck instead, that's my advice. And if you're super curious, install Windows and play this game using Game Pass. So to sum up, I mean, on the Steam Deck I wasn't expecting this game to be playable. Just the fact that I can actually get it to hit 30s despite the heavy sacrifices, I think is pretty interesting. Just the fact that it can actually be played like this. But at the same time, I wouldn't say is worth doing it if you have another way to play the game that is not a Steam Deck. As usual, guys, remember that if you're playing on a portable PC, like the Steam Deck and all that, sacrifices need to be made, especially when we're talking about top-end new games like this one that have the latest ray tracing technology in real time and put computers to their knees, basically, and have a lot of destructible environments. So let's be realistic for a second, and well, if this ever gets verified, I'll make another video checking it out. But as of right now, please don't buy it for Steam Deck, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys, thanks for watching.